America, man.
Britain is too fat and is getting fatter.
37% of the adult population worldwide is either overweight or obese.
What is officially the biggest health crisis in American history.
1/4 of Australian adults are now obese. That's up from just 11% in the late 1980s.
The number of obese and overweight people in the developing world has quadrupled.
Over 30% of China's adult population is now overweight.
Why is this happening?
It goes back to the 1970s and 1980s.
We went from eating 3 times a day to eating 6 times a day.
Easy access to cheap fatty food is fueling the problem.
We live in an obesogenic world.
Eating every 2 hours.
This is the whole problem of the modern eating pattern. We're eating just too frequently.
And doing nothing is not an option.
The devastating effects of diabetes.
High blood pressure, cardiovascular disease.
There is this link between obesity and heart disease.
Life-threatening condition called metabolic syndrome.
It is now the #1 chronic liver disease in America.
A new study finds a strong link between obesity and breast cancer deaths.
And so on, and so on, and so on. It's not an exaggeration to describe the obesity epidemic as one of the greatest health challenges the world has ever faced. And it's a problem that's getting worse.
It's a shocking truth.
Many experts believe that rising levels of obesity in children means that for the first time in over 2 centuries, today's children will live shorter lives than their parents. So obesity is a problem for the present and a problem for the future. But could the answer to the crisis be found deep in the pages of history? In 2016, Canadian nephrologist Dr. Jason Fung published his groundbreaking work, The Obesity Code, which ranks as one of the most comprehensive explorations of the obesity epidemic ever written. In his book, Dr. Fung explains that the traditional calories in, calories out model of weight loss is flawed, and that it's the body's physiological response to food that is at the heart of the issue. The teachings of Dr. Fung and others led to a surge in popularity in intermittent fasting, and it has been espoused by doctors, athletes and celebrities the world over.
Over the last 5 years, I have been doing intermittent fasting.
Intermittent fasting.
What I do is I eat for 8 hours and I fast for 16.
But are they right? Is it a hormonal imbalance that's at the heart of the crisis? And is intermittent fasting really the answer when it comes to not only losing weight, but also maintaining weight loss? Have you ever wondered how our ancestors survived before the birth of agriculture? After all, there were no convenience stores or supermarkets or fast food restaurants they could go to. Our prehistoric ancestors were hunter-gatherers, meaning if they wanted to eat something, they had to hunt it, catch it, and kill it, which they did very successfully. However, there would have been times where the hunt was unsuccessful, meaning there would have been periods where they didn't eat anything for several hours or even days. So how did they survive this feast or famine way of life? To answer this question, we need to understand how our body processes and utilizes the energy that we give it. When we finish a meal, our digestive system breaks down the carbohydrates, fat and protein into glucose, fatty acids and amino acids respectively. These breakdown products then enter the bloodstream, with the exception of fat, which enters something called the lymphatic system. When these molecules enter our bloodstream, they cause our blood sugar to go up. And our bodies need to control blood sugar very strictly. If our blood sugar levels fall too low, our cells won't be able to produce the energy and function properly. If our blood sugar levels go too high, it can damage our blood vessels and cause some serious complications. So after we've eaten, our bodies need to respond. Some of the glucose will be used to fuel our immediate energy needs, but any extra glucose needs to be taken out of the bloodstream and stored for a later day. And the body has a very effective system for doing this. Insulin is one of 2 hormones whose primary job is to maintain a steady and healthy blood sugar. Excess glucose is repackaged and stored in the liver as glycogen. When the liver can't store anymore, insulin stimulates fat and muscle cells to store what's left over. Insulin is therefore a storage hormone and tells your body to store rather than break down energy.
Well, bye-bye belt.
So, the food you've eaten has been processed, and insulin has brought your blood sugar down to normal. But your cells are hungry for glucose to produce energy, and soon, your blood glucose levels begin to drop. Without an energy source, your cells can't function. And if you're not going to eat anything, you're not going to get that energy. Your body needs to do something. Glucagon is the yin to insulin's yang. Glucagon tells your liver to convert the glycogen it has stored back into glucose and release it into the bloodstream to bring your blood sugar back up. So we can see that blood glucose control is a dance of hormones. Insulin to stop it going too high and glucagon to stop it going too low. Your body is eventually going to run into a problem, however. There's only so much glucose it can store. Depending on several factors, your liver can store around 80 grams of glycogen, and in the fasted state it will use this at around 8% per hour, which presents an obvious problem. What happens when these stores run out? Mother Nature anticipated this problem and designed a safety net to keep us alive. When there's no food around or our stored glucose is low, a number of complex processes are triggered with the aim of creating new glucose. These processes are numerous and too complicated to explain in one video, but for our purposes, the most important is that glucagon and other hormones will stimulate the breakdown of fat to fuel this new glucose production. Some parts of the broken down fat molecules will be transported to cells such as muscle cells and the brain. Other parts of the fat molecules will be taken to the liver where it can be used to produce more glucose. What's even more amazing is that this process creates a byproduct which your body can also use as fuel: ketone bodies. This is the point where we have flipped the metabolic switch and start using our body's fat stores as fuel. Depending on how much glycogen is stored in your liver and the amount of exercise you do while in the fasted state, the metabolic switch will occur anywhere between 12 and 36 hours without food. The crucial point to take away from all of this is that none of this can occur in the presence of insulin. Insulin is a fat storage hormone. If our ancestors were going for long periods without any food, their insulin levels would have fallen, and they would first have relied on stored glucose, and when that ran out, their bodies would have flipped the metabolic switch and burned fat until they could find more food. The second they ate more food, their insulin levels would have risen and the whole process would have stopped. So if we think about this in the context of the modern world, we're eating more food more frequently. So if every time we eat our insulin levels go up, and we're eating constantly throughout the day, that means our insulin levels are constantly high and we are storing energy all the time. And since our muscles and liver can only hold so much, we end up storing a lot of it as fat. And this is the problem with the idea of eating little and often. It ignores the crucial role that hormones play in weight loss and weight gain. We never get to flip the metabolic switch. So where does intermittent fasting come in? We first need to be clear on what intermittent fasting is. Put simply, it's the voluntary abstention from food. The voluntary part is what distinguishes intermittent fasting from starvation. Intermittent fasting can take various forms. There's prolonged fasting, which typically involves abstaining from food for between 24 and 72 hours. The most popular form of intermittent fasting is what's known as time-restricted feeding, which means you only eat during a certain time frame each day, such as between 11 AM and 7 PM. Another popular method is the 5-to-2 diet, where you eat your normal daily calorie requirement for 5 consecutive days and reduce it to 25% of your calorie requirement on 2 consecutive days. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to focus on time-restricted feeding, which is not only the most popular but also the most sustainable regimen. The time-restricted feeding protocol involves consuming all your calories within a certain time frame and fasting for the remaining time. The most popular regime is the 16-8 method, where you fast for 16 hours and eat during an 8-hour period. For example, you have your first thing to eat at 12 midday and your last thing to eat no later than 8 PM. You then consume no calories between 8 PM and 12 midday the following day, giving you a total of 16 hours without any calories. The beauty of adopting this time frame is that the vast majority of your fast is done when you're asleep. After around 12 hours, your body's glycogen stores will be significantly lower, and your body will flip the metabolic switch and start burning fat. Therefore, someone following the 16-8 plan will spend around 4 hours of their fast burning fat. And the longer you spend fasting, the more fat you burn, with the sweet spot being between 18 and 20 hours. Many people have incorporated intermittent fasting into their lives and can't speak highly enough about it. But like anything, there are those who are skeptical about it or completely against it. For one thing, many historians dispute the idea that our ancestors went for days without eating. They claim they would have eaten fruit or vegetables when they were hungry, meaning the idea of this evolutionary fat-burning mechanism is false. Others claim that intermittent fasting does not lead to any greater weight loss than calorie restriction. The medical and scientific communities have taken a keen interest in intermittent fasting in recent years, and it's a concept that's being studied more and more. But does intermittent fasting stand up to scientific scrutiny? Does the research support the claims made by Dr. Fung and other people in the field? Clinical trials and medical research can take many forms, and the value of the findings depends on the design of the trial and several other factors. This pyramid shows the type of research which produces the strongest levels of evidence, and for the purposes of this video we will concentrate on studies from the top levels. Systematic reviews are studies which answer a defined research question by collecting and summarizing results from different studies which meet the eligibility criteria. Randomized control trials take a number of similar people and place them into 2 or more groups. One group will be given the treatment being tested and the others will be given a different intervention, a placebo, or nothing at all, and at the end of the trial the results will be compared to see if the intervention works. Meta-analyses are statistical analyses which combine the results of multiple scientific studies to see if any conclusions can be drawn. This 2020 systematic review analysed 27 trials which looked at the various forms of intermittent fasting, and found all 27 trials showed weight loss between 0.8% and 13% of baseline weight with no serious adverse effects. Interestingly, 12 studies comparing intermittent fasting to calorie restriction found equivalent results for each method. A 2018 systematic review and meta-analysis published in the Journal of Translational Medicine analysed the effectiveness of intermittent fasting compared to continuous energy restriction. The results showed both intermittent fasting and continuous energy restriction achieved a comparable effect in promoting weight loss. And this 2016 meta-analysis also drew the same conclusions. One of the most eagerly anticipated trials was the TREAT randomized control trial, which involved 116 participants split into 2 groups, with one group practicing 16/8 fasting and the other eating 3 meals per day. While they found a significant amount of weight loss within the fasting group, there were no significant differences in weight between the 2 groups, leading them to conclude that time-restricted eating in the absence of other interventions is not more effective in weight loss than eating throughout the day. Critics of this study point out that it didn't consider the timing of the eating window, any physical activity or behavioural support. To further confuse things, this meta-analysis, which looked at the results from 6 randomised control trials and 5 observational studies, found that time-restricted feeding participants lost more weight than people who ate whenever they wanted. The authors of this study concluded, TRF regimens achieved a superior effect in promoting weight loss and reducing fasting glucose compared to approaches with unrestricted time in meal consumption. However, long-term and well-designed trials are needed to draw definitive conclusions. This video set out to answer one question. Is intermittent fasting the answer to the world's obesity crisis? As there's no one single cause of obesity, there can't be one single solution to it. However, there is one biochemical process that is at the heart of the problem: insulin resistance, which leads to hyperinsulinemia. In medicine, we always look to treat the underlying cause of a disease, and this is what intermittent fasting aims to do, but it must be employed properly. Many people's weight loss efforts are unsuccessful because their strategy is built on weak foundations. Calorie restriction goes against your body's natural instincts and is ultimately doomed to fail. What intermittent fasting does is provide a sustainable framework that you can add to your lifestyle. It's ultimately a lifestyle choice which is based on medical knowledge on how your body works and how it can work. It provides a foundation on which you can start to look at not just the quantity of food you eat, but also the quality. One of the most important benefits of intermittent fasting is how it makes many people more mindful of what they're eating. There's a wonderful sense of accomplishment when you complete your fast, and knowing how your body will respond when you eat certain foods. and it makes people much more conscious about what they're eating and how their food choices will affect the work that they've already put in. Make no mistake, intermittent fasting isn't a ticket to eating anything you want. A diet of refined processed carbohydrates and poor quality food will work against what you're trying to do. The old adage of "you are what you eat" still rings true. So if you are interested in intermittent fasting, you need to think of it as a framework around which you can build a healthier lifestyle. For those of you who remain unconvinced, I'll leave you with the results of a recent study in the journal Obesity Medicine, which asked a group of female doctors what strategies they employ for their own weight loss and what they recommend to their patients. Hi everyone, I just wanted to stop by and say thank you to you for watching the video and watching all the way to the end. I can't tell you how grateful I am, and I hope you got some value out of it and were at least a little bit entertained. So I've watched it back, and yeah, there are a couple of things that I will improve on for future videos. I think the first thing is that in a couple of parts I spoke a little bit too quickly. So for future videos, I will definitely address that and speak more slowly and more clearly. And the other thing I wanted to touch on was the research. So I only provided a snapshot of what research has been conducted in this area. There are hundreds of papers on intermittent fasting, some showing it to be very effective and others less so. And generally speaking, I found it to be a very, very useful tool for weight loss, and not just losing weight, but also maintaining weight. And I think that's the problem that a lot of people have. Losing weight is the easier part of the equation. I myself follow the 16-8 intermittent fasting regimen. I found it a great way to maintain my weight, which is a weight that I'm happy with. And I recommend it to a lot of my patients, and a lot of them have done very, very well with it. Now, while intermittent fasting will be fine for most people, there are cases where it won't be appropriate. So the first two that jump to mind are if you're a type 1 diabetic, and also if you're pregnant. But if you have any underlying health conditions or anything you're not sure about regarding your own health, I recommend you speak to your doctor. Your doctor will be very pleased to hear that you want to lose weight, and will do all that they can to encourage you. So yeah, I'd just like to say thank you once again for watching the video. I have a lot of other videos planned for this channel. I think I have about 11 other videos I want to make off the top of my head, but coming up with new ideas every day, so hopefully you'll enjoy those as well. If you did like the video, if you could click the like button for me, and subscribe if you would like to. And also let me know in the comments if there are any issues surrounding weight loss or weight gain, or anything around this topic that you would like me to talk about. Then I'd be more than happy to do so. So just let me know in the comments, and I'll do my best to help you out. Okay. Thanks very much, everybody. Take care. Bye bye.